you a better governor than any of the other candidates? Thank you very much for that.
Ah, come on. You know, I think there are a lot of good candidates in the race. What I believe is unique about me, as I've gone through this last legislative session, I believe is a seriousness of purpose and really trying to understand the reality of our situation with the state's economy and the state's budget. I voted against the budget in the end. I was one of a handful to do that, and I did that because I didn't think the legislature and the governor acting together had met our full responsibility to Vermonters, which was to balance the budget. We left an $8 million hole when the legislature left Montpelier. And I thought it was important, and I spoke out, and I was very clear that we identify either further cuts or further sources of money to fill that hole. I happen to recommend the rainy day funds. I understand that's debatable, but that's what I felt. And I believe that when we go through tough times like this, we can't play let's pretend. We've got to address the real issues and come to real solutions. And I felt that that was not being done by others in Montpelier.
So if you had been governor this session, what's one thing that would have been different about this legislative session?
Well, I think I would have addressed that issue. I supported the Challenges for Change initiative. I think it's important. If I'm in the governor's office next January, I believe that process that started looking for greater efficiencies in state government and with those who use our state tax dollars was an important process. And I'll be pleased that it's started. What I wasn't pleased about, what I would have done differently, is put together, in the end, a balanced budget. Again, I think the efforts to try to find those savings and to find efficiencies and make cuts was absolutely essential. But in the end, despite all of those best efforts, we ended up with a hole in the budget, and I would have wanted to fill that hole. And again, I would have used the rainy day funds.
How would you describe Vermont? Pro-business, anti-business, or somewhere in between?
You know, we get that question every day, and frankly, I don't think it's a worthwhile question. I think it really hurts us as a state. We're all pro-business, and we all recognize that there are challenges in this state. But it's not an either-or situation. And what I think is important is that we talk about what's good in the state of Vermont. There is a lot that's going on in this state. I'm meeting entrepreneurial businesses who are doing very well. We have high quality of life. We've got a great environment to build on. It's an asset to this state. And as governor, I'm going to promote what's good about Vermont. At the same time, we have to recognize the challenges that we face. Challenges with our permit process, challenges with energy costs, healthcare costs, and all of that. But let's have a practical discussion. My view is we need to be practical about solving those problems and not engage in that back and forth about pro-business or anti-business, which really, in the end, doesn't get us anywhere. Let's solve our problems.
Are Vermont's taxes too high?
You know, nobody likes paying taxes, and I would like to find ways to reduce our taxes. At the same time, I think we've got a pretty good tax system. There are things that we can do. There's a tax commission that was set up by the legislative leadership in this last year, which will allow us to look at the impacts of our taxes and the economic repercussions from any of our tax policies. Yes, I would like to find ways to reduce our taxes, but at the same time, our taxes are higher than average, and we get something good out of that. We do enjoy a higher quality of life in Vermont. We do have good services for our citizens that allow us to be strong communities. We are able to provide education to our citizens, and I think there are a lot of good things we get out of our tax dollars, and to just engage in that constant conversation about the tax rates, again, I don't think gets us very far. We need to talk about the services that we need to deliver and what Vermonters need, our families, our businesses, and our communities, and then try to set a fair tax policy, fair tax rates in response to that.
If you had $1,000 to spend on economic development, where would you spend it? And for this exercise, it could be $10,000.
Oh wow, that's really that's terrific. Can we go higher? Do I hear 100,000 out here? You know, I think what's working best and what I believe is most important is our job training programs and our ability to have and maintain a high quality workforce. When I talk to a lot of business people, what they're looking for in this state, along with a permit process that works and tax policies and infrastructure and all of that, they want a high-quality workforce. And when I look at how the state was able to get Dealer.com to stay and expand here in Vermont, it was in large part about job training programs to make sure that they had the skilled workers that they need to add the 200 or 300 jobs that they want. So to me, that's, as I talk to businesses, they're wondering where they're going to get those skilled workers. Job training is a top priority.
How would you rate the job of Vermont's public schools in preparing students for today's world?
Generally, we're doing, I believe, very, very well in Vermont for a majority of those kids. It's a challenge. It's a constant challenge. Education is evolving every day. What's needed to have kids have the skills that they need when they get out of school to go on to higher education or to go into the workforce. I'm worried about those folks who were identified in all the testing that we do and identified in the Next Generation report. Those are the third of our Vermont kids who either are not graduating from high school, or when they're graduating, they do not have the skills for higher education, training, or to get into the workforce. And we pay a great expense when we are failing those kids. My focus as governor will be to try to keep our standards high, but really focus on those kids who are getting left behind. A lot of them start in poverty. And that's been a focus of mine. I believe we need to do something so that kids are all kids are able to get a good opportunity for higher education. That's vitally important to those kids. I believe it's vitally important for our communities and our economy. And going back to the question of investments, job training, we need a highly skilled workforce. And if we lose a kid through our educational system, that kid, as an adult, is not going to be part of our workforce.
If elected governor, what's the one thing you will do to strengthen and promote manufacturing in Vermont?
I will start with what I believe every business and every family needs, regardless of what sort of business they're in. And that's to do the things that only government can do. And that, to me, is maintaining our quality of life. That's been our competitive edge in this state. Our environment helps us sell our products, attract entrepreneurs, attract tourists, and keeping money flowing in our economy. The second is to work on the quality of our infrastructure. Our roads, our bridges, obviously, but also rail, airports around the state. Rutland, for example, the airport in Rutland is very important to that community, as well as broadband and broadband access and telecommunications. Absolutely essential for any business in this state. And the third area is one I've talked about already, is the quality of our workforce and our educational system. Those are the foundations for a strong economy. Those are the foundations for strong business, whether it's manufacturing or any other sort of business in the state.
Who has inspired you in your life and why?
You know, I've been inspired by a lot of people. I think back to Phil Hoff, who really brought this state into the 21st century with new ways of looking at things and recognizing that Vermont was getting left behind the rest of the country as the rest of the country developed and educated its population. I look to, as I think about being governor, I look to Dick Snelling. I was president pro tem in 1991 when we went through the last recession, which paled in comparison to this one. But I worked closely with Dick Snelling, and I'll tell you one quick story. When he got elected, he said, you know, times are tough, but don't take my word for it. We're in danger of losing our high bond rating. He took all the legislative leaders, and I believe we were all Democrats at that time. We got us airplane tickets. We flew to New York. We met with all the bond rating houses, and he told us he told us they would tell us that Vermont was in trouble, and we needed to respond. And we became a team. We went out to dinner. We came back home, and we worked well as a team. That's the way to approach our problems. It wasn't about Democrats versus Republicans or independents or progressives. It was we were all Vermonters. We were all elected officials, and we had a job to do, and we figured out how to do it together. And to me, that's an inspiration, that's a model for how I would like to see state government work and how I would work if I'm elected governor.
Which Vermont governor is your model, or would be your model?
I just mentioned the two. Phil Hoff with his recognizing that we needed to be a modern state, and Dick Snelling, who recognized the need to build consensus and to put partisan politics aside when Vermont needed help.
And what's your favorite candy bar?
And on that note, darn, I can't answer that. Kit Kats, thank you very much.